All right, so we've got a pretty chilly day with a little bit of wind. We've come out to Tumoon Bay to the park here, and we're just about to finish stage 3, so we're on week 6 and we're tracking pretty well. Our goals for today are to be able to get a 5-meter send out and onto their place, and for them to stay there for a minute. We'll recall them to the front position, release them, and then we'll go back into that. So our loop is going to be to the pedestal from a maximum of 5 meters, stay on there for a minute, recall to front, reward event, and then send them out to the pedestal again. We're also going to be introducing heel from a dynamic aspect. So we're going to start to introduce 1 step, then 3 steps, then 5 steps. And then what we're going to be doing is using a lure to keep them locked into that heel position right next to us. And then we'll build that up over time. And then we're going to finish off with 1 minute of liberty, but this time instead of being stationary and static, we're going to be moving around. So they'll be able to go to where they want to go, and that's going to be kind of our cool down, and we'll work our way back to the van for that stage. So again, pedestal, 5-meter send out with 1 minute on the pedestal, followed by a recall to the front position. We'll then have a reward event, send them back out to the pedestal. Then we'll go to the heel, building that up by 1 step, then 3 steps, and 5 steps. And then your homework really is to build it up for many steps and to remove the lure as well. And then we'll finish up with some liberty. So let's have a look and see how the students go. Xena, warrior princess herself. You can see she's still a little bit tentative. Being a border collie, she wants to be quite attentive and reliant upon her handler, and we're teaching her some independence, which is pretty important for her because she's got some trigger issues which compel her into antisocial action. And if she can be more independent in her function, then that will allow her to control those tendencies a lot better and be more proactive instead of reactive. You'll notice that on her recall she takes quite a bendy turn to get to us, like that banana curve. It's going to be really important for any dog that shows this type of apprehension to do more of that, take a much straighter line. And I probably shouldn't have worried about the front at that stage. As you're changing over from a long to a short or short to a long lead, it's really important that you always have one piece of equipment on at all times. So make sure that's on, it's on. Now you can remove the other, still got a handhold on the collar. Grab a handhold on the lead, now I can release the collar. So we've built a static heel so that Xena understands what position she's supposed to achieve, and now we're introducing that right about turn, which kind of goes back to our square drill, and she had a bit of a difficulty there. So we're going to break it down a little bit for her, food in hand, lure her around, tam, get her onto the place, feed. So even in that heel position, you can see that she's trying to move further away from me so that she can get eye contact. And those are the things that we want her to overcome, this over-dependency on her border collie nature. So just on that last video, in the liberty session, Xena decided that she needed to have a bit of a wee. Now, some people would question, well, hey Stu, is that okay? And the answer is yes, because she's at liberty. And what is she not allowed to do at liberty? She's not allowed to misbehave, and she's not allowed to pull on the lead. Those are the only 2 rules. So as long as she's behaving and as long as she's staying within range of the lead, she's good. Now, she's at liberty, she's not under any constraints. So is she allowed to mark? Yes. Is she allowed to urinate? Yes. I don't have a problem with that. She's not misbehaving. The rule set ultimately is yours, but she waited up until the session had obviously finished and she realizes that she is at liberty. I don't care whether the student cheats a drill, that shows me that they're starting to develop a strong comprehension of the rule set, and that means that they're learning. So I see that as a win-win situation. Now Mia's going to have a bit of an episode. She over-fixates, and I'm going to give her a lead snap. I'm also going to try and present a tam, and she is irresponsive to each. There's the Tim. Here's the tam. And she is beyond reach of both of those things. And that shows me that there is no way that we are going to achieve anything beneficial on our current path. We have to change. We've been working place a great deal, and you can already see that even though she's peeking out, she's doing the best that she can to stay on place. I don't have a huge hold on that lead. You can see I've got my index finger and my thumb on it. And she is doing whatever she can to stay on that place. That shows me that she's struggling to keep herself contained. So we've gone to positional forced relaxation, also known as conditioned relaxation. Get your fingers into the meaty parts of Mia's body, start with the neck, and just work a deep massage. Really, really important, and continue with that massage. Work from spine down to tail, grabbing some of the skin folds. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but continue to do so. If your student presents a bite risk, put them up, get them away. But I know that Mia doesn't present a bite risk to me. And that allows us then to recover quicker. Here's her stress shake. She's shaken off the traumatic experience that she's just gone through. And I'm going to get her to run it off. Again, we're going to talk about that soon. I just want you to see how I'm lunging her around. She is going back to the square drill. She is trying to keep a loose lead. She's still in a heightened sense of arousal. There's lots of fight-flight activity going on between the ears, and we're going to capitalize on that. We're not going to suppress it. We're going to exploit it for what it is. So now all of a sudden, she goes from moving like a potato to moving like grease lightning for her. So she's moving, she's jogging, and soon enough I'm going to be jogging around in circles as well. She's not sniffing, she's not overwhelmed by anything, she's expressing herself in a far more physical way, and that's going to allow us to get some benefit out of the session. But the previous stuff that we wanted to do, that's shelved for now. So you can already see the difference, and when she's triggered, she's a very different girl. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde thing. So now that she's triggered, she's willing to put physical effort into whatever it is that we're going to do. But before she's triggered, she's super hesitant. So we're going to slow things down a little bit for her. Notice that she's always on a loose lead. Now we're going back to place. You can see how vigilant she is of her surroundings. Particularly, where did that trigger come from? Stage left. Where is she orienting herself? Stage left. She's always looking over to that direction for the next bad thing. She's still not really into the reinforcers because of what happened previously, but we're going to soldier on anyway. We're just going to go back. We're going to use some tactile information to help mold her into a sit. And from there, we're going to get into our heel. We're not asking for much. Just asking for her to stay with us. And I'm going to use the lead to help speed and slow her down and get her into that sit position. Session recovered. What you could see in that session with Mia was that we had too many triggers come too soon. That means that she didn't have her enough time for the cortisol to flush out of her system. So those, if you look it up on Google, it'll be called something like trigger stacking, right? So she had too many triggers. In this instance, there was too many strangers and there was too many dogs. And it was the dogs that finally, they're worth more stress than people are. People are stressful, but dogs are even more stressful for her. And the anger that she feels, in inverted commas, is something that precludes her from then accepting food anymore, and we've got to get that mental state away from that reactive state back down into that more operant, that more thinking state, that more intellectual and civilized state. So sweet, let's have a plan for that. We put her on place, and all I did was conditioned relaxation. So we started off with the neck muscles, gave her a really good deep massage. Like, it's got to be deep, it can't be like this tentative, I'm not so sure if I'm going to hurt you type of massage. It's got to be this, I know exactly what I'm doing and I'm going to give you a deep muscle massage. And as long as we're doing that, then we're able to actually give her enough of an emotional break to let her heart rate come down and let that adrenaline sort of taper off. And then once we've worked at the base of the skull, we'll work our way down the spine. And what can help is when you grab a hold of the folds of skin. So you're just grabbing a hold, and like with Mia, pretty much any dog really, even with a dog the size of Mia, you can grab a fistful of that, and that's when like the excitement just plummeted down. It is not punishing, it is not inhibitive, it is not painful. There's been research done on this. There are white papers that have been published, okay? So this is kind of like the face licking that you'll see adult dogs do. It's an artifact from puppyhood. Right? So from puppyhood, the dam would pick the puppy up by the loose folds of the skin and transport them around. And as we do that to our adult dogs, it gets into that really primitive part of the brain, and it allows them to relax more, because as soon as we grab a hold of that and we hold it for 5 to 10 seconds, that tends to put the brakes on so much that it leads me to think that it gives them that primal relaxation that reminds them, hey, I'm safe and secure here, someone else has got this. It's kind of like a big hug when you really need one. And I did that with Mia all the way down the spine as well, and you could see that that helped her recover extremely quickly. Getting her on the place, still a little bit difficult, but we got there. There's no way she was going to accept food, but what do I do with all of that adrenaline afterwards? I didn't believe that play was going to be the best avenue, because I don't want her to believe that combative expression is how we reduce our stress once triggered. So instead I lunged her around, right? You'll see me, I'll be walking around in circles, and I'm going to do it so that she can't do it at a walk. She's going to follow me around. She's at a loose lead the whole time, but she's starting to jog, right? She's not galloping, she's in a, what is that, a trot or a canter? Trot. So she's trotting around, and then I'll make the circle bigger, and then I started to jog around as well. And that allows her to get that, all of that adrenaline, all of that fight and flight stuff. She's able to put that into something productive. Now, that's not something necessarily that you can do at home, but it is something that you can do on a walk. And if you've got a backyard that's big enough and she's triggered and excited after play, you can do that, and that'll become a conditioned, or it will establish a conditioned response that when we do this lunging thing, that's when I start to relax. And after that, we could go straight back into the session. So she did really good. Her recovery was quite quick, and we found a mechanism that works for her. As soon as she had finished being triggered, she was actually a lot better in the session. And that's something that I'm noticing with her. She's very slow, she's very tentative, lots of paw raised up, which shows me apprehension, until she's triggered, and then everything seems to click. So from here on in, we might just try and start off with some play, or try something else that gets her heart rate up, rather than overcoming her inhibitions, or disinhibiting her previous to the session. Surprisingly, this was a really difficult session for Ready Teddy. My assumption is that of an evening around here, there's lots of rabbits, there'll be foxes and those sorts of things, and other sort of tempting scents. And I think that's probably the reason why he was so distracted here. Place, he could do place, but the walking and the other things, that he found them really hard. And you can see, if you track him on social, he's actually got a huge amount of enthusiasm, and what we're seeing here is nowhere near his potential. For him, he is actually really slow, clumsy, he's all over the shop, and my only assumption is that that's because of the ambient odors and scents that are around. So I've had to pare it down for him. He can still do what I want him to do, but I was kind of a bit disappointed that he wasn't able to do it basically on the path that he was projecting. So we've got Liberty, and you can see, I mean, Cocker Spaniels are what they are, right? They get excited, the nose goes to the ground. They get stoked, the nose goes to the ground. They get scared, the nose goes to the ground. That's a Cocker Spaniel. Now, Mr. Blue has actually come a huge way. I am super pumped about where he's heading and how he's tracking. You can see huge amount of enthusiasm for the things that we're doing. He's still very much like a puppy, which is kind of cute. He's such a big dog, but he's got like an 8-week-old puppy enthusiasm. You can see him bounding over to the place. He knows what he's doing. There's plenty of excitement between the ears, that heart pumping. He can't wait to do the thing, and he does it as best as he can. Yep. Just a quick note, you can really see with Teddy and Blue that they're really pattern oriented, and it's not that they can tell the time, but they can feel the passing of time. The same way that I tend to finish my sessions at 5 minutes because I'm conditioned that way. These guys can kind of feel when their 1 minute on place is done. So you could see in Teddy's session, Teddy would tend to break the place at around about 55 to 1 minute 5. And Blue on that last one laid down at 1 minute. So it's showing you that your dogs are learning. They are also not just intellectually learning, they're emotionally learning as well. So the back end of their brain takes over and they go, hey, frustration kicks in. What do I do now? Blue tends, because he's socially sensitive, tends to appease more. Teddy, who is not so socially sensitive, he tends to drive for more. All right, so Bluey wants to pull more out of you. Teddy wants to push more out of you, if that makes sense. So use those signs that you can see to help push their training further along the line. So we're just refining his sits. He's giving us the high fives, those sorts of things. But all I'm teaching him in this particular instance, he can walk next to me with the lure. So we're going to continue to condition that. But what I really want him to do is to sit next to me. His habit is to sit in front, and because he knows that that's how we finish the drill, he's always going to try and cheat the drill by forging forwards and then sitting in front of me, and well, that's a trip hazard. A pretty common thing that we tend to see is the incompatibility between what our student has previously quite often the case is that our students show us a picture of what they've actually learned, and then they become so specialized in that one particular expression of things that they can't generalize, they can't apply it in different contexts. So in the case of the heel, for example, we want our students to sit at our left side, but if we've only ever taught our dogs to sit in front of us, looking up at us, then they will always default to that. So what does that mean for your heel? That means that your student is always going to try and say please by coming around the front of you, forging ahead, turning around, looking up at you. Now that's incompatible with the heel, so we have to teach them first to be sitting at our left side. So we've done that in the previous week's training, but Blue's conditioning is quite strong. So what I've done is I've put the place board up on its side and used that more or less as a wall to help teach him more clearer picture of the positioning that we want to have. And he did pretty good, but he's going to need some extra work because the mental circuit that exists for sit means come to you and sit somewhere in front of you. That's quite strong, and we're now building something in competition with that. Yeah, so when I stop, he stops and he sits next to me. It's a massive diagnostic for things that are to come later on.